All right, ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Please take your seats. We're going to get started. Please take your seats.
The President's Call. September the 14th, 2023, Lord W. Johnson, Clerk of Council, New Orleans City Council, 1300 Perdido Street, New Orleans, Louisiana, 70112. Dear Madam Clerk, pursuant to my authority in Section 3-1075 of the Home Rule Charter of the City of New Orleans, I'm calling a special City Council meeting on October 3rd, 2023 at 10 a.m. The purpose of the meeting will be to conduct a public hearing on the removal of Gregory Joseph pursuant to Section 3-125 of the Home Rule Charter as a result of the charges outlined in City Council Motion M23-424, as well as other matter that the council may lawfully consider. Please make the necessary arrangements to have this special meeting cablecast live on the government access television channel and tape for recasting in the future. Sincerely, J.P. Morrell, New Orleans City Council President. Roll call, Councilmember Thomas, Councilmember Green, Councilmember Morrell,
Present.
Councilmember Moreno,
Present.
Councilmember King, Councilmember Harris, Councilmember Jeruso. We have 6 members. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. If you would, could you please begin with the regular agenda? Is there anything you have to read at this point?
The first one I've already done.
Okay.
But the second one is what I'll do. The public hearing, a public hearing conducted pursuant to Section 3-125 of the Home Rule Charter to consider charges against Gregory Joseph as more fully set forth in motion M23-424, and if unwarranted, to consider his suspension or dismissal from the city service.
Thank you. Before we get started, I believe the city attorney would like to make a comment or a statement. I'm sorry.
Good morning. I'm City Attorney Denisha Turner, and I am here on behalf of the appointing authority, which is the mayor, and also on the limited basis on behalf of Gregory Joseph as well. I'm requesting a continuance of this matter to allow Mr. Joseph an opportunity to secure counsel of his choice. I'm here pursuant to Charter Section 3-125 and Charter Provisions Section 4401. So I would ask that the council consider this request. I don't believe it's adverse to the council. I don't think anything is going to change between now and giving Mr. Joseph an opportunity to secure counsel and be heard.
Before I make comments, anyone else want to give comment? All right, I have a couple of, okay, Mr. Good.
I do have a comment. Could you confirm on the record that you feel that 2 weeks, and is that based on a conversation with Mr. Joseph, counsel, or what do you base that decision on?
I think 2 weeks is an appropriate opportunity to give counsel an opportunity to come up to speed regarding this matter.
To come up to speed? All right, that's fine. I, Mr. Chairman, would like to know the procedure if I wish to introduce a motion to allow for a 2-week recess.
1 second, council member Moreno.
Thank you, Mr. President. My question is, if you don't represent Mr. Joseph, then why couldn't Mr. Joseph be here to make this request on his own, or at least send us some type of written notification, email, anything like that?
I do represent Mr. Joseph today for the limited purposes of requesting a continuance.
Okay. Couple of questions. And you can talk to Adam right now about what you want to do, Mr. Green. Ms. Lombard, I guess first I'm confused. Sorry, Ms. Turner. I have a friend named Denisha Lombard, so I mix them up sometimes. Ms. Turner, let's begin with issue number 1. Pursuant to your own conflict policy, when the council and the mayor have a conflict, you, in your personal capacity, are to represent the administration, correct?
Pursuant to the conflict policy, that's correct, if there is a conflict of interest. However, for these limited purposes of standing here today requesting a continuance on behalf of the appointing authority, which is the mayor, and Mr. Joseph, there is no conflict.
No, the conflict currently is the council has taken a position and the mayor has a position that is adverse to the council. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So there, in that instance, according to your own policy, you and your personal capacity represent the mayor of the city of New Orleans, correct?
That is correct.
I am having trouble as an attorney. When you have your own conflict policy, we are in conflict. And very specifically, the city of New Orleans provide paid counsel or city attorneys to employees, whether they be classified or unclassified, in civil or similar proceedings. Yes or no? The yes or no question.
I'm sorry, I was.
My question is that when there is a civilian employee, whether it be classified or unclassified, and they are involved in litigation, does the city of New Orleans provide counsel for them? Yes or no?
That's not a yes or no answer, because sometimes the city attorney's office will represent an individual individually. It just depends on the circumstance.
When a individual is accused of gross misconduct or something like it, does the city attorney routinely represent individuals?
We do routinely represent them.
Can you cite me an example in recent memory in which you represented in the city attorney's office, represented someone accused of gross negligence, for example, in a capacity if they were charged with that or that was alleged in that role?
No, I cannot, but this is what I can tell you. If there is an employee of the city of New Orleans who's working in their course and scope, and we determine that they are in course and scope at the time, we will represent them, notwithstanding the allegations. However, it's all fact specific. So if there is an allegation and it appears as if that employee is not in the course and scope of their of their employment with the city, that is when we will not represent them. That's not the case here. I am simply here today on behalf of the mayor and Mr. Joseph, which is a very ministerial proceeding, and ask to request a continuance of 2 weeks to give Mr. Joseph an opportunity to secure counsel. That's it.
Follow up. Number one, is Mr. Joseph at work today?
I'm not sure where Mr.
Okay.
Joseph is. I am
You-
standing
you-
here
you-
as his representative, as often happens in civil proceedings, where an attorney will be present on behalf of their client, and sometimes their client is not here. So I understand Mr. Joseph is not here. I'm gonna finish and I'm gonna let you finish.
Well,
I understand Mr. Joseph is not
Actually,
here.
to be clear,
Mhm.
this is a council proceeding. You don't get to tell the council president, let me finish. That is not appropriate. It's not appropriate.
Councilmember Morrell, what is appropriate is for me to listen to everything you have to say, and then for you to let me finish what I have to say so that everyone can be clear. And so what I was saying, if I may proceed, is that it is the practice in civil proceedings. I'm not a criminal attorney, so I don't know what happens in criminal practice, but you can certainly appear and make a small request on behalf of your client, and that is what I'm doing here today.
Okay, well, there are 3 attorneys up here, Ms. Donisha, as you're aware, and I am in several civil proceedings. And when you have 2 co-defendants, the representative of one defendant typically does not make requests on behalf of the other defendant because they may have issues in which the 2 differ. Number one. Number 2, as I've stated repeatedly, according to your own conflict policy, specifically, you represent the mayor of the city of New Orleans when these 2 parties are in conflict. If you are Mr. Joseph's representative, then he's represented today. You can't be half his representative. Either you're his attorney or you're not his attorney. Mr. Joseph, is Mr. Joseph incapacitated? You spoke to him as he appeared to be in good
Councilmember
health.
Morrell, I have been in several civil proceedings, and when we go to request a motion to continue a matter, our client is never present.
So you're saying Mr. Joseph is your client?
I'm saying for the limited purposes, again, for the limited purposes of today and requesting a continuance on his behalf so that he can secure counsel, I am asking for a continuance.
As I stated previously, according to your own conflict policy, you represent the mayor in an issue where the mayor and the council are in conflict. You are saying you'd like to be recognized as a partial counsel to Mr. Joseph while he retains counsel. I would note to you, one, on August 31st, at our hearing, Mr. Joseph had counsel. Subsequent to that date, at every opportunity, Mr. Joseph has told the public and told the press and told everyone that would listen that he had no intention of appearing at this hearing today. You're telling me when someone has told the public repeatedly he has no intention of showing up and he's not here, that suddenly today, now he wants counsel. You're aware, because you are the mayor's representative, that he had counsel on the 31st. The charges were sent over on the 12th. We have had zero communication with Mr. Joseph to date. Mr. Joseph hasn't bothered to send the council an email asking us for him to have a continuance. He has not responded or spoken to the city council in any capacity. But suddenly today, you show up. I'm assuming Mr. Joseph is in the building somewhere. You spoke to him personally. Let me ask you once again, a very simple question. Is Mr. Joseph incapacitated? You spoke to him. Is he in good health?
To my knowledge, he is not incapacitated, but I can't speak definitively to that. But yes, I did speak with Mr. Joseph.
Did he give you any physical reason why he could not appear today in person to ask for a continuance?
He did not, but I am here on his behalf requesting a continuance.
Did he give you any reason why he couldn't type an email asking for a continuance?
He did not, but I did not make that request specifically of Mr. Joseph. And if you need that email, I can definitely ask him as soon as these proceedings conclude. If you would need something in writing specifically from Mr. Joseph regarding a continuance.
I think that there has been ample time for Mr. Joseph to show up. I find it very difficult when someone tells you their intention, they follow through on said intention. Mr. Joseph has said repeatedly to everyone who will listen, he had no intention of attending this council meeting. He is not here today pursuant to what he has promised everyone since the charges were sent. It's hard for me when we have heard directly from Mr. Joseph from his mouth that he has no intention of coming here and he has not shown up, that a third party then shows up with no evidence Mr. Joseph has asked for continuance other than an attorney who does not represent him asking for one on his behalf. To date, as we sit here, it is 10:25 a.m. There is nothing that prevents Mr. Joseph from making that short walk from the second floor over here to ask for a continuance. It is just very difficult to contemplate based on the fact that Mr. Joseph has not taken these proceedings seriously since the onset, that in the matter of 2 weeks, he will do so. You're also aware, I'm sure, because you're an attorney, that it is a regular practice of bad faith litigants to change lawyers repeatedly to continue cases. Mr. Joseph had representation. If Mr. Joseph would like to show up here under oath and explain what representation he has and what efforts he's made to get new representation, that is something typically judges require when you switch lawyers. So I appreciate you being here today, Mr. Druso.
Councilmember Morel, may I just?
Yes, absolutely.
Reply? It will be very, very short. I believe Mr. Joseph's intentions were to present today with counsel. I do have evidence as late as September 28th. He did have counsel, but he no longer
Who
has
was the counsel?
I can't, I'm not going to divulge the name of the attorney who then said that at this point in time, it's not a good opportunity for them to represent Mr. Joseph. I don't think that I should give that attorney's name publicly.
Well, you're asking us to rely upon the fact that Mr. Joseph sought counsel and had an issue. without providing who the counsel was.
And I understand.
You
that.
understand that's problematic. And I'm talking about just as a civil, you know what, other lawyers want to talk, Mr. Jeruso has his button pressed, and after that, Ms. Moreno.
Good morning, Ms. Turner.
Morning.
I'm hearing from our lawyer that we're gonna get some legal advice on what we want to do. I know that you're here for limited purposes, but I feel compelled to ask some of these questions. By the schedule set by the council president, Mr. Joseph's witness and exhibit lists were due on September 22nd, and we have not received those. Do you know why that didn't happen?
I don't, I can't speak to that, and I did not have a conversation with Mr. Joseph's previous attorneys.
You just said that you knew and you anticipated what I was going to ask, is that as recently as September 28th, you were aware that he didn't have counsel. The first notice that I received was Councilmember Morel telling me at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock yesterday that Mr. Joseph did not have a lawyer. When do you know when he first learned that he was no longer represented by counsel?
I can speak to September 28th as a definite date when the latest attorney that he was communicating with indicated that they would not be able to represent him in this matter.
Okay, I guess I'm just gonna say my frustration. I don't want to speak for anybody else, is that we've had a meeting. There have been allegations that the procedure that we're using may not be legal, or that there are additional facts. And that as a lawyer, what I think we always want to apprise somebody of is then bring your case. And on the 22nd, Mr. Joseph did not communicate, nor did anybody else on his behalf with the council about a witness and exhibit list. That yesterday is the first time we didn't hear about having counsel. And I feel like we're placed now on the horns of a dilemma, not of our making, which is, on the one hand, the procedure sets forth having a lawyer. And in my belief, people should be represented, particularly when their charge is this serious. But on the other hand, this is the first time sort of we're really hearing about this. And if we're gonna consider our counsel's legal advice, then I guess guarantee isn't the right word, but what assurances that are bordering on a guarantee are we gonna have that we're not gonna get to 2 weeks and then there's some new crisis du jour preventing this? I mean, in other words, are you coming here representing and binding Mr. Joseph that if we grant a 2-week continuance, that on whatever today is, that on the 17th, he will be here in council chambers?
Yeah, of course, I can't represent that, but
Right.
what I can represent to you is that he did have an attorney up until September 28th. And so, and you do litigation as well, so I can appreciate that you understand that it would be better for Mr. Joseph to be represented in these proceedings. I cannot guarantee you that once he does secure counsel, that attorney then may say, I need a little bit more time. That is what I cannot guarantee you. But what I am asking for is to give him an opportunity to secure counsel, and I'm asking for 2 weeks in order for him to do that.
I would just say that if you want the continuance, he needs to be here on the 17th. That's for me. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Councilman Moreno, and then Councilman Harris, and then Councilman Thomas.
So he was represented last time he was here by Ms. Lasky. Is that who he had up to the 28th?
I'm not sure about Ms. Lasky.
Okay, I just, all right. I do think it is important information to figure out kind of the path here on the different attorneys. So what Councilmember Jeruso just talked about and the importance of right to counsel, I certainly agree with. But I think Councilmember Jeruso made a really good point, and I'll just take it a little step further, is that it just appears that Mr. Joseph hasn't taken this entire situation seriously at all. And I think the concern is whether today he's just taking advantage of the city council in this entire process in general, not even sending us a correspondence himself, a quick email could have been sent, any day. requesting this continuance, and I think that the council would have been very amenable to getting that done. A quick phone call to the council president, to his office, to our executive counsel, Adam Swensick, from Mr. Joseph requesting this. Once again, all of these very easy tasks that he could have done to demonstrate that he did take this process seriously and that he himself was really requesting this continuance. So I think that's kind of the concern. No doubt about it. I do agree that the right to counsel is incredibly important. And obviously the way that this is all laid out in the charter states that, which is why I actually want to turn it over to our executive counsel to talk about this particular issue. And, you know, obviously we do lean on him on potential guidance in this matter as well. So Mr. Swensick, sorry to put you on the spot here, but I am interested in your take on this.
Councilmember Moreno, may I just
Sure.
reply? I hear what you're saying, but I do believe that Mr. Joseph is taking these proceedings very seriously. Again, I am here today on his behalf requesting a continuance so that he can secure outside counsel, but I do believe he's taking the
And I'll
charges
just say
very
this, Ms.
seriously.
Turner, what a waste of your time, because a quick email from him would have prevented all of this. I mean, honestly, a quick email from him a few days ago, we wouldn't even all be sitting here. No one here would have, because we would have been here for a moment to continue it and move on. So, I mean, I actually feel badly for you that you have been forced to be put in this position. Mr. Swensick.
And I understand what you're saying, Councilmember Moreno, and I appreciate it, but it's never a waste to advocate for your client.
Councilmember, the charter section 3125 is pretty clear that both the appointing authority and the accused have the right to appear and be heard and to be represented by counsel. So to that end, if Mr. Joseph, through Ms. Turner's limited appearance, is making a representation that he does not have counsel, it might be prudent to continue. What I will say is that the right to counsel under the charter, I don't think it's reasonable to construe that as an open-ended invitation to thwart the council's oversight by never getting counsel and showing up hearing after hearing and saying, I don't have a lawyer. And so to the extent the council is inclined to grant Ms. Turner's request, I do think if we show up 2 weeks from now, Mr. Joseph says, well, I still don't have counsel, I think that's a different set of circumstances, and the council, I would feel much more comfortable legally proceeding, notwithstanding the fact that he does not have counsel.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate it.
Ms. Harris.
Sure. Thank you, Ms. Turner, for being here today.
You're welcome.
You know, as one of the four attorneys, I echo, I feel sorry for you, that you're here instead of Mr. Joseph. But I do want to make something clear. When you first started, you said you need this time to allow his attorney to get caught up to speed. And again, I think what we're hearing from everybody is that if he shows up here with an attorney who again requested a continuance, it's not going to happen. That's like showing up to CDC over and over again, requesting a continuance, and you know what happens across the breezeway.
Right. And I do. And so, and I do know, because I've practiced a lot across the breezeway, that the judges tend to be more liberal with continuances. So just speaking from my experience, I know once you secure counsel, and then the counsel goes back before the judge and says to the judge, listen, judge, I just got this case. I'm reviewing it. I'm trying to come up to speed. Can I just I am requesting a continuance, judge, on behalf of my client. And usually across the breezeway, they will give another continuance and say, but this is it. So that has been my experience in my, 29 years of practice doing civil litigation.
Well, I've been practicing a little less than you. I've been practicing, I don't know, since 2002. So you do the math. And my appreciation is that if you come over and over again to a court and say, I don't have counsel, I need a continuance, you're not going to get a continuance. So I would say this, Ms. Turner, if he comes back before us and asks for a continuance, I don't think he's going to get it.
before I get to Mr. Thomas, one sec. What I find very interesting and very telling is that Mr. Joseph repeatedly, and I'll cite a media outlet, the Gambit, through today has said, I have a hard stop on my employment on October 3rd. In fact, Ms. Turner, at 9:34 this morning, he posted on Instagram, I've got a hard stop on October 3rd. Explain to me at 9:34 this morning, before you, as you were coming down here to make representations, that he takes this process seriously. He is still, I mean, honestly, this is Donald Trump levels of insane. As you're sitting here saying he takes the process seriously, he's posted on Instagram saying, I'm gonna have my hearing on the 3rd. Explain to me how that works.
I don't follow Mr. Joseph on Instagram. I don't know what he posted. So
You sound like a Donald Trump lawyer.
I am not a Donald Trump lawyer. Maybe Donald Trump has very good lawyers, as I am one. But I cannot explain a post that Mr. Joseph posted, and I have not seen it.
Mr. Thomas?
First of all, Ms. Turner, I don't feel sorry for you because you're a very good and capable lawyer. I appreciate all the times you've come before the council, whether it's been contentious, whether you've had to represent the administration, or whether you've dealt with a lot of the issues that seem to plague us right now. So thank you for being that attorney. I apologize. The last several weeks, of course, everyone knows I've been caught up in my mother's passing and being out of town. So though I've paid attention to this issue, it hadn't been number one for me or anyone in my family, any of the meetings we've been in. But I am familiar with proceedings. I'm not lucky enough to be a lawyer, but I was lucky enough to be around when Oakland Jones with the whistleblowers case, and he would ask for continuances, and the proceedings would take twists and turns, and it would last longer than we thought. But there were times when witnesses and people who were involved in those hearings didn't always have their stuff together, and it took quite some time to get to the point where, and I think it was a former council member at large, Jeruso, who was actually deliberated and led those hearings. But the one thing I do know is about when there's an issue, when you need counsel, there's a request for counsel, then the court usually tries very hard until its patience runs out to grant those requests. But then the flip side of it is understand is that there's also respect for the body. You know, I'll never forget Jim Singleton saying he didn't have to always agree with the mayor, but to respect that level of authority and respect that seat. I remember people coming before the council saying they didn't have to always agree with the council, but to respect that. So I would hope that we could find some common ground. I don't want to continue to see the Hatfields and McCoys or the OK Corral or Duel at Diablo. So if you could give a message to Mr. Joseph from me that he should take these proceedings seriously. He may not like the council or its leadership, but to show that level of respect sends a message throughout the community about the order of law and about rules and public policies. And I think to do that, if that would happen, that would at least show a whole nother level of respect on both sides, how we can move forward. Now, I'll say to my colleagues, the only thing confusing to me about this, and I apologize to you guys for not being as present on this, but there's so many other people in the chain that would have had to touch this or deal with this or be in a meeting to design it, the bullet points, printing it, okaying it, allowing it to come out. And so it's just interesting to me, that I don't understand why this is the only subject who's potentially subject to this. When Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles could tell you that it had to be more than just one person to get to this. So, and then once again, I apologize for not being as present with the other stuff. But that's just some of my limited findings and not being an attorney and just knowing a little bit about legal proceedings and investigations. Thank you.
Thank you, council member.
Two quick points. One, Ms. Thomas, if you read the binder, the two binders provided to you and the investigation, it was a determination through that 6-month investigation that Mr. Joseph was the only person culpable. And particularly, as you may recall from the initial findings, specifically the mayor as well as Goet Montano were found to not be involved, and that everything involved in this originated with Mr. Montano. That was the findings of the investigation, Gregory Joseph, which has been repeatedly made available to the public. I understand, and I think I will take the lead of Councilmember Jeruso in this regard. Ms. Turner, I am very concerned, and I've told you this before we had this meeting. I am very concerned on two levels. One, I understand you're here in a limited role representing Gregory Joseph. I think that is very, very problematic, in my opinion, as the council president and as an attorney. I think it's very problematic. The charter envisions the administration having a representative, Ms. Joseph having a representative. I find it very problematic that despite the fact that these proceedings have been public, that Mr. Joseph was engaged as recently as the 31st when he had council present, and he had council present, and the fact that he has had zero communication to date as of right now, asking for a continuance himself, when he has a publicly owned computer, a publicly issued cell phone, and he is aware of the charges because they were delivered to him by our council law enforcement who handed them to him, as well as the outline for it. The fact that he is Donald Trump style posting taunting things at the council while sending his attorneys in limited capacity to clean up after him at a hearing is also very relevant, not as far as your representation, but as far as the fact he does not take these proceedings seriously, and this is just another of his antics. All that being said, I will state three things. One, I think that considering council member Jeruso's points and considering your request, I am inclined to do a 2-week continuance with the understanding that we're not doing anymore. Two, in the charges which were sent to him, there was a deadline of September 22nd to submit evidence, to submit subpoenas for evidence, and to give a witness list. On September 22nd, the last date that this could be occur, rather than follow the process, Mr. Joseph was posting images from France. There will be no continuance in regards to him having discovery or anything else, because according to you and according to Mr. Joseph's representations, he was represented as recently as the 28th, which is during and beyond that date. So though we are giving him a continuance of 2 weeks to secure counsel, we're not continuing anything else in these proceedings. Further, I believe just from the tenor of the council up here today, there will be no effort to provide a second continuance. And to be clear, based upon his behavior, it is more than likely with his behavior, he may turn some votes that might have been his the other way if he continues to flaunt the council as he's done thus far. So with that, I move. Wait, no,
Councilmember
Mr.
Morale, may I say one thing? I hear what you're saying. I wouldn't want to prejudice another attorney and Mr. Joseph's case, because Mr. Joseph cannot provide a witness list. He cannot submit documents. An attorney would have to do that. So the attorney did not do that. Then the attorney stated that they would not be able to represent Mr. Joseph. So I would think that a new attorney would be allowed time to submit witnesses and evidence on Mr. Joseph's behalf.
Okay, I hear the attorneys all saying the same thing. You know that's ridiculous. If you have a schedule, if you have a schedule on a civil proceeding of when discovery goes and you switch lawyers, judges do not restart discovery, Ms. Turner, you know that. And you can sit here and say, well, there's been an extenuating circumstance, but generally speaking, Mr. Joseph has been aware of all the dates. We have the individual that served him in the chamber. If you like him to come over and say, I handed it to him in his hand, he was aware of the dates. The fact that council is willing to give him an additional 2 weeks to secure counsel, we're not going to be in a cycle where we create a precedent where you can hire lawyers to make this process continue ad infinitum. The evidence that's before him, his attorney is more than willing to respond to the evidence that is presented. He was required on September 22nd, and he was given notice to do so, to do that process. If he wants to file a suit against his attorney, who we don't know, because you won't tell us who the attorney was, and he won't, that sounds like malpractice. If he'd like to go sue that attorney, that's between him and that attorney. But that deadline was hard set. I think, does any other attorney here want to speak, or did I cover that pretty thoroughly?
You covered it thoroughly, but I'm sorry, but I feel like I need to gild the lily a little bit here. I mean, Ms. Turner, this is not directed at you. I just want to make the record on this behalf. The council met on August 31 to have our initial GA hearing. That is over a month ago, and then we set forth a schedule of what was supposed to happen, including preparing. And again, I realize you are not the attorney, but I'm just trying to make the case for where we stand. It is also true that lawyers have the right to enter a default judgment against somebody if they don't answer properly, they don't appear, they don't do all the things. We're now at a 6-week point where we are being told literally at the 11th hour and the 59th minute that Mr. Joseph is unprepared. Whether he manufactured that lack of preparation or did not is not my place to judge. All I'm saying is, given the fact that now he does not have counsel, the council has provided him an opportunity to be here, that Mr. Joseph failed to submit filings, and that now that we're being asked to grant a continuance, I'm telling you, I think the tenor from my colleagues is that we're willing to grant the 2 weeks. But beyond that is pushing the envelope, because we just have not received anything in response. And we're getting to the twilight of being able to continue to extend these proceedings unnecessarily. That's all that I want to say.
Thank you.
All right, I think Mr. Green has a motion to do the continuance. However, we are aware, so the continuance will be granted. However, there are people who entered cards to speak. Because this is a public meeting and many may not be able to attend in 2 weeks, we'd like to provide them the opportunity to speak. So, Mr. Green, I'm going to recognize you for a motion. We're going to hold that motion till public comment is over, and then we will vote on that motion. So, Mr. Green, for a motion.
My motion is simply to grant a recess through until October the 17th at 10 o'clock a.m. I only want to add to that, the council has awesome powers and responsibilities. Many of our powers and responsibilities are designed to protect the public and to protect those who are accused of certain matters. I've heard from the city attorney that until September the 28th, there seemed to have been counsel on board. I'm willing to, in light of this information, and also in the interest of making the proceedings as fair as possible, and also recognizing that 2 weeks in the scheme of things does not throw us off of our schedule, that we grant this 2-week extension through the 17th of October at 10 o'clock a.m.
Okay, before we vote on that motion, we have public comment. I'll second that motion, but we're going to hold the vote on that motion, ladies and gentlemen. We have several people that like to speak.
Thank you, council members.
Thank you, Madam City Attorney. First up, and these are, I guess we'll do the ones in opposition first. We have Gregory Richardson, who would like to speak in opposition. Mr. Richardson? Okay, Mr. Richardson. We have two from Mr. Richardson, who is representing Alex Rover, owner, and Sam Torres, owner. Actually, this is a Board of Zoning and Adjustments thing from yesterday. I don't know what those are about. All right. Sorry. Mr. Anthony Tony Childress? Yes, sir. And after Mr. Childress, we'll have W.C. Johnson. Go ahead, Mr. Childress.
Good morning, council and everyone that's in the chambers. My name is Anthony Childers. My address is 161 Cypress Grove Court in Algiers. And of course, I'm in opposition of the proceedings of termination. I would ask that the council consider alternatives such as a suspension rather than take a drastic step in termination proceedings. I have not read the entire report in regards to this 6-month investigation by the council, but I'm an advocate reader of the newspaper and get a lot of my information from the news, social media. And I would like to say to all of you that this issue has been a firestorm amongst our New Orleans community. And we need to get a handle on this, okay? Because there's a lot of outside influence and agitation that's going on, that's urging all of these things that are happening in our community, okay? This thing with the home charter, of course, I was against it. I'm still against it. I think the city council has powers that has been voted on by the voters, so I agree with that and stuff. The voters agreed to this homeroom charter that gave the additional authority to the city council. Now, you know, with myself, I thought that meant the department heads. Okay, you have a say so in what new department heads and everything else. I congratulate you, and I agree with that. But once you start coming into issues in regards to the employees of those departments, then I have a problem with, because now to me it seems like it's becoming an overreach, and you all need to consider that, because now I think you're entering the uncharted.
Mr. Childers,
Chairman.
your time is up, but I do want to give one clarification. This power that we're exercising was not a charter amendment. This has been in the charter for decades.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm just saying,
aware of that.
okay, so what you're here talking on today has nothing to do with the charter amendment, it has to do with the power that's been granted to the council for decades.
For
It's not
decades,
new.
absolutely.
Okay.
I'm aware of that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank
No
you.
problem. W.C. Johnson, after Mr. Johnson, we have Mr. Morgan.
W.C. Johnson, Community United for Change, 1645 Gentilly Boulevard. I learned at a young age that when you're selling something, that you have to learn how to sell up into the sale and don't sell beyond the sale. What I just witnessed from Ms. Turner was selling beyond the sale. Then she walks out. She's asking counsel for one thing, and then she turns and she leaves. Now, it's no secret that the current administration does many things that evokes disrespect to this body as well as other bodies, as well as the citizens of New Orleans. The citizens of New Orleans they depend upon you to protect them, to stand up for them. And when we get a situation where a person is thumbing their nose at you, sticking their tongue out at you, that the public needs to see and understand that our council is not going to allow this to happen. So I would ask that you seriously reconsider allowing for the 2 weeks, because it's just more fuel for the mayor and her staff to continue to treat you like you don't exist. You are here because of the people, and I'm asking you to stand up and protect, administer, and represent the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan, and then Ms. Ford.
Morning to the council and everybody in the house. My name is Larry Morgan. I represent the voice of NOLA South, East, and West of NOLA. Today is a very important day that you take into consideration. There's an old time saying that New Orleans is the big easy. And when I used to travel around the world, I heard it from many people. Today, we must prove that New Orleans is not the big easy. That for you to come in here and run your game and try to take advantage of the people. And that is a situation that has been taking place in Cottrell administration. This fella here, Cottrell, has always, as far as I can remember, had gave you councilman nothing but the blues. And there was a time in the first administration, in the first few days, I had to jump on her to work with the council. And she ran an article in the paper that she will work with the council, but she did for 2 weeks and then went back to her old trick. Now today I ask, not that you suspend Joseph, I ask you to fire him. Suspension will only relieve from him more problems in the future. To connive and scheme against you and trouble. That is a cancer that will always exist as long as he is in office. That cancer out and fire him today.
Ms. Ford, and after Ms. Ford, we have Mr. Burnside.
Good morning, council. My name is Kim Ford. I am the chairperson of the New Orleans chapter for the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America. And I also have the Tree Shakers Radio Talk Show and have been for quite some time very active in the things that have happened in the city council. And like I say often when I come up here, we have 7 council members and 5 of them are new. So the community won. We want change in our city council because we have not always had progressive city councils. Let me just say that. But throughout the entire time of this man's, the hearings that you call for, I was actually here in council chambers for the most of it, right? So I saw it with these 2 right here and these line things right here. And the disregard and disrespect that he had, not only for this council, but for this entire city, all for the news media. He talked about them like dogs. You understand? Knowing I feel like they carry all the mayor's shenanigans. But he came and sat right up here at this table and disrespected all of us. So if you have already agreed to suspend it for 2 weeks, if that's what you've already decided to, because I love my council. I'm enjoying working with you all, especially you, JP, because I feel like you have consideration for the community. But if you're gonna let him suspend it for 2 weeks, then I suggest a suspension without pay. He don't get to continue getting a payment for 2 weeks while we waiting to negotiate this. His actions have, and that way, if you suspend him for 2 weeks without pay, I can live with that. You understand? I want you, like you said, I want you to fire him today. But if you're gonna leave him there while you suspend this, he need to be doing it without getting the advantages of the taxpaying citizens in this community because we deserve better. And I didn't even hear that discussed. No, he don't need to get no more pay from the city of New Orleans. He don't even watch our news. No, he don't watch it. Y'all know he said that. You know how
Ms. Ford, your time.
disrespectful.
Thank you, Ms. Ford.
Yeah, you know how.
Mr. Burnside, and then Mr. Baye.
Michael Eric Burnside, 2215 Felicity. I came here because it was a city council meeting. If it had been a committee meeting, I would not have come. This is going to sound weird, but I love my city council, so I try to pay attention to them. What they do matters to me. I'm not a very good political animal. When the sheriff was here talking about her little money to, provide raises to her people, I never believed that I'd be part of the 9% to vote for it, and 91% of the people voted against it. Shows you how naive I am. But I can count. There are 9 media here and 14 people.
It doesn't say very good things about the politics of the city, that there are only 14 people in this room and there's 9 media in the room. Which makes your lives hard up there. It makes it hard because it's easy to hate and hard to love. And I know that there are problems between the council and the mayor, and it makes me unhappy because I happen to like both. I wasn't going to say anything about Gregory Joseph. I don't know the man. I've got no comments about him. But I've got prejudices against lawyers going way back. My brother was one. He's dead now. And what the lady did when she walked out of here was rude. She came in here basically saying that the representatives of the people needed to be kind and generous to a gentleman who may or may not deserve it, and then extended no kindness and no generosity of spirit to those of us who came here to speak or not speak. She's not here to hear us. And lawyers may be able to walk out whenever they damn well feel like it, but politicians have to sit and listen. So I'm compassionate to you, no matter what your vote's going to be. But I do remember a lady named Susan Guidry, who was the only red vote the day that Energy packed this house with paid actors for the New Orleans East. And that one red vote made me very happy and very proud.
Thank you, Mr. Burnside. Mr. Valle? And also for Ms. Ford, we've been advised by council, we can't suspend Mr. Joseph until the hearing. We have to have the hearing and then do action. So it's not an option. Just suspension without pay till we have a full hearing. Mr. Valle, go ahead. I just wanted to give you that answer, Ms. Ford. I just want to give you an answer, Ms. Ford.
Gary Valier, 2232 West Street. What I'm seeing here, and I was here for, Mr. Joseph was here back in August and in September. Disrespect for the council and disrespect for the citizens of this city. We're here to see a proceeding, and the guy that's being, his actions being questioned, he's not here. You asked Councilman Morrell if he was at work today. I think we have the right to know if he's getting paid today by the city of New Orleans. If he's in this building, I think you should have requested that he make his way down here and make that request himself. And what I saw from the city attorney's office, the city attorney, she wasn't sure about what to do with the Gregory situation, Gregory Joseph situation. The least of us don't have those privileges like Mr. Joseph does. I mean, if you catch a guy doing something in public on the sidewalk, he wouldn't get that type of consideration. Come back in 2 weeks, he will make a decision. What he's doing on the public is similar to what people get arrested for doing on the sidewalk. I mean, you can't just do that to us and tell us it's rain. His behavior to this point, he should be held accountable. He should be terminated. He's not been a good steward of our money. We expect the same thing for you as a council, to be good stewards of our money. For him to sit in that chair and lie and say he didn't know he was messing up our money, that's not acceptable. I was a city employee, as a firefighter. If I did something wrong, I'll be called to the chief's office and say, write a special report explaining yourself. He doesn't have to explain himself, but he continued to get paid. I just don't think it's right.
Thank you. That concludes the comments. The motion on the floor is to do a 2-week continuance to allow Mr. Joseph to obtain counsel. Please vote your machines. 6 yeas, did everybody? Somebody? 7 yeas, 7 yeas, no nays. This matter will be recessed for 2 weeks till the 17th. Thank you. There's no adjournment with recess. No adjournment.
I want to get the same kind of justice up there to get rid of you. Everybody don't have to go here. He need to go. He need to go.